Welcome once again to our third series of webinar ETF reporting. You are welcome from wherever you are joining. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. We shall be recording this session as we are starting on top of the hour, my time. I hope you are fine. Thank you, and we appreciate that you have been able to join in time so that we can start. So we have already started recording the session and we shall be starting shortly. Yes. So today's series, third series, is about the overview of how to report on adaptation actions covered in sections D, E, and F of the adaptation component of the BTR. It will provide guidance on how to report on the following areas: adaptation actions, including strategies, policies, plans, goals, and actions to integrate adaptation into national policies and strategies, progress on implementation and results of adaptation, systems for monitoring and evaluation, adaptation actions and processes, and how best available science, gender perspectives, and indigenous, traditional, and local knowledge are integrated into adaptation. And we shall be drawing examples from the national communications, national adaptation plans, and NDCs. Specifically, running just through the program for today, we shall have an introductory session, which I'm actually moderating, and then we shall have my colleague to still take us through the overview of today's session. And then after that, we shall have a mentee with questions and discussions, and we hope that you will participate. And then the third session, we shall be hearing examples from country experience from Eswatini, from our colleague Dina Min. And then we shall also have a session for question and answer, and then we shall have breakout groups discussions for about 10 minutes, and then we shall close our session. So from my side, I would like now to introduce my colleague, Mr. Saljana Bundalo, to take on the next session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you very much. And thank you all for participating all these days with us and joining us to this, I can say, adaptation reporting marathon. So I hope that you have got useful information in the previous sessions. And now we will move further to the next sections of the BTR. As Sheila said, session 3 is will provide you an overview about BTR adaptation sections D, E, and F. So I will start my presentation now. So let me share just the screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we see it.
Thank you. Yeah. So I will provide you with an overview of the section D, E, and F. So as from previous presentations, we saw that guidelines for the section C and D request information from countries about the forward-looking aspects of your country's national adaptation process, namely information about adaptation priorities and barriers in section C and adaptation plans and actions in section D. In the context of the reporting of this section, this represents the first step in reporting actual adaptation. As such, information requested by this section is key to reporting on what your country is doing to adapt to adverse effects of climate change, and that you have identified actually in your section B. So let's go deeper in the section D. This section titled Adaptation Strategies, Policies, Plans, Goals and Actions to integrate adaptation into national policies and strategies. So the main goal of the section D is to ensure BTR to provide information about adaptation actions that have been planned or implemented by the reporting country in its efforts to adapt to the climate change. In addition to this, the guidelines also ask countries to provide information how best available science, gender perspectives, and indigenous, traditional, and local knowledge are integrated in adaptation. So more about adaptation actions reporting. When reporting on adaptation, countries should prioritize reporting on their main adaptation policy processes, and this would mean reporting on national adaptation plans or NAPs and other strategies and programs, national climate change plans or strategies with an adaptation component, and the adaptation components in their NDCs for just developing countries. Reporting on their main adaptation policy processes should be prioritized by countries within the BTR, as these processes represent the highest level adaptation policy process in country and play a crucial role in enabling, coordinating and driving adaptation. After this, countries could report on other policy processes like subnational sectoral adaptation plans or mainstreaming adaptation in sectoral planning, and individual adaptation actions like single-time limited projects or initiatives. The same applies when reporting on implementation status and results of adaptation activities. So progress and results of main policy processes such as NAP, National Adaptation Plans, strategies, NDCs, so they should be the priority. Adaptation actions refer to time-limited activities with clear, tangible objectives. Adaptation projects, capacity building initiatives are in this category. So providing information on individual actions can be utilized by countries in adaptation reporting to achieve their objectives, including to provide an overall flavor of adaptation actions implemented across different sectors, areas, communities, providing basic information about the action. For example, name of action, title, objectives, implementation status, and if available, high-level information about the action outcomes. For example, if you have information about mangrove restoration projects, country could provide information about that specific area that you implement this project. Also, providing this information about individual actions includes and aims to demonstrate that certain types of adaptation are being prioritized by your country, to draw attention to actions that are deserving recognition, and to share good practices, experiences, and lessons learned. As mentioned previously, the main goal of Section D is to ensure that BTRs provide information about the adaptation actions that have been planned in your country. The main request for countries to report on adaptation actions is found in bullet point B, which asks for information about 11 different types of adaptation actions that countries could report on. So due to this extensive nature or catch-all nature of this list, this can be interpreted that all types of adaptation actions are relevant to report on. However, while bullet point B essentially makes it clear that all adaptation actions are relevant to report on, bullet point E, F, and G specifically reference that adaptation actions should be reported if they either have mitigation co-benefit, constitute mainstreaming, qualify as being a nature-based solution, and this could be interpreted as a request to prioritize reporting on actions that meet one or more of these criteria. However, adaptation reporting is definitely a country-driven exercise, so countries should feel free to determine whatever they want to do this or not. While guidelines do a great job of identifying the broad range of adaptation actions that countries should report on, relatively little guidelines is provided relating to what information countries should actually provide when they report on these actions. The only guidance in the guidelines provided in this regard is bullet point AA, which might be asking countries to include information about how these actions contribute to the global goal on adaptation. However, if we interpret bullet point A as asking countries to include information about how these actions contribute to the different dimensions of the global goal on adaptation, countries could meet this request by describing how adaptation actions are expected to enhance adaptive capacity, strengthen resilience, or reduce vulnerability to climate change, and or expected to contribute to sustainable development. In other words, it will inform the reader about impact of the action that is intended actually to have. With regards to the guidelines, Section D actually specifically asks countries to consider providing further forward-looking information about planned actions being reported, and additional information could include, for example, information about the inputs allocated to an action, for instance, budget, or details about its implementation, implementing actors, beneficiaries, geographic scope, etc., etc. In the continuation with regards to the guidelines, Section D actually also specifically asks countries to provide information about how best available science, gender perspectives, and indigenous, traditional, and local knowledge have been integrated in the process of designing adaptation actions. And also how development priorities have been integrated in the process for designing adaptation actions, or how or to what extent stakeholders have been engaged during the adaptation planning process. Countries can provide this understanding by describing the steps were taken to strengthen and extend to which gender perspectives or indigenous traditional knowledge are captured and integrated into plan or strategy, and how these steps are reflected in contents of the plan or the strategy. Steps in this context can be involving representatives of women or indigenous, traditional, and local knowledge groups in the preparation, implementation, and review of the plan and the strategy, or undertaking gender analysis prior to preparation of plan and strategy, integrating gender responsiveness or utilization of indigenous traditional and local knowledge into criteria for prioritizing adaptation actions. Information requested by guidelines here only refers to specific principles and good practices in designing and selecting adaptation actions. In this sense, countries may provide information on the processes through which adaptation actions have been designed and selected, or prioritization processes that follow the selection of priority areas for adaptation and analysis of barriers, and include processes for identifying adaptation options, also processes for designing adaptation actions, and processes for reviewing and appraising these options over time. The processes of designing and selecting adaptation actions is fundamental component of developing adaptation planning documents, including NDC and NAPs. And it is expected that information about how these processes were conducted, meaning modalities, procedures, and which actors were involved, can be found within these planning documents. So to see one example on how this information might be included in adaptation planning documents, we can look at Fiji's National Adaptation Plan. In section 6 of their NAP, Fiji provide a clear and informative description of how adaptation actions are prioritized in their NAP document and how they are actually selected. This includes information about criteria against which actions were selected and actors, stakeholders involved in that selection process. Further, this section of NAP of Fiji also provides details about how ecosystem, human rights, and gender-based approaches were considered in the selection process. So it's obviously including all this information provided in NAP or some other planning documents about how adaptation actions were planned and selected within the report, like BTR. For the report like BTR, they might be a bit too much or overkill. So as such, countries will probably want to find a best way of summarizing this information so that key points can make it into BTR without necessarily taking up 4 pages, which is case in Fiji's NAP. To conclude this section, I would like to provide some reflections on reporting on the adaptation actions. Countries can approach reporting on adaptation actions in the wide variety of ways. So in that sense, countries can provide full range of adaptation actions undertaken by their government. In reality, however, this is a big task, as logistically ensuring that all adaptation is documented and tracked in central databases is difficult, especially for developing countries. Also, conceptual issues such as what is adaptation and what is development blur the lines about what should and what should not be included in the reports. Further, the task of reporting on adaptation would only grow in size as the adaptation process of countries expand over the time. So it is important that to stress that before preparing report on adaptation actions in the BTR, countries ask themselves what actions or types of actions do they want to report on. So answering this question will involve considering what we want to achieve through reporting on adaptation actions, what will reporting on certain actions or types of actions achieve, and how much information and what information do we need to provide to achieve our adaptation objectives and goals. As said, countries can approach reporting on adaptation actions in a wide variety of ways, and there is no wrong approach to tackling this issue for adaptation. Over the next slides, I will present two general approaches taken by countries in their national communication. One is a broad approach, where countries reporting a wide range of actions across the sectors, priority areas, regions, and jurisdictions. And other way, which is more dynamic approach, where countries focusing reporting efforts on specific areas. So the example is Australia's national communication from 2018. Which actually represents a good example of broad approach. The report provides clear information on wide range of adaptation policies and actions across key sectors at both the national level and the state levels. This approach gives the audience a real flavor of what Australia is doing to facilitate adaptation across its subnational regions and sectors. Providing all this information about wide range of actions being implemented makes it clear that adaptation is being integrated into policies and decision-making process, at least at the national and the state level. Also, looking further, while not all actions are described in enough detail to understand their goals and scope, the report makes a good use of hyperlinks to link readers to the external web pages of initiatives, allowing interested parties to find out more if they so wish. Another nice feature of this national communication is that it makes excellent use of case studies. It uses this as a means of sharing more detailed information about specific adaptation actions that Australia wants to showcase. This is something which can be used to good effect when countries want to use these reports for sharing good practice experiences and lessons learned. So the next example of different approach, however, is South Korea's fourth national communication. In this national communication, South Korea limits its action reporting to key national policy and planning instrument that established to lay the foundation for further adaptation action. In practice, this means it has reported on establishment of its legal framework that mandates national and local governments to plan and implement adaptation measures. Its three main adaptation strategies and plans at national level, and the report on its program for monitoring and assessing climate risks at national level. Doing this, the South Korea, their national communication provides audience with an overview of the approach adopted by these strategies, plans, and objectives, and information how these plans have been built upon the experiences of previous adaptation planning cycle. What South Korea's approach doesn't do, however, is provide any information about the substantive content of these plans. For example, there is limited information about the sector-specific targets or actions contained within these plans. And as such, audience does not really get a flavor on what is going on ground in the country. So to summarize this, in taking the broad approach, as we saw from example of Australia, countries better able to demonstrate that they are making progress in priority areas, including in planning and implementation adaptation on the ground. Also highlight sectoral actions the country has planned that require international support to implement adaptation. Also share success stories, achievement, good practices, and experience, lessons learned about the adaptation. In taking more dynamic approach, however, countries are less able to provide this flavor of what adaptation is being implemented on ground across the sectors or geographic regions. The benefits of this more dynamic approach, however, is that readers can get very clear idea of what country is doing to facilitate adaptation on a strategic level in medium to long term, and a good idea of where the country is presently in this process. So the guidelines for the section E and F request information about backward-looking aspects of your country's national adaptation processes, namely information about progress being made in implementing adaptation, as you can see in this red market area, section E, and results of monitoring and evaluation processes applied to adaptation actions in section F. So moving to section E, information on progress on implementation of adaptation. The main goal of section E is to ensure that BTRs include up-to-date information about the status of the adaptation actions that are being reported in the document. For example, actions reported on in response to section D. In addition, section E also gives developing countries an opportunity to report on effectiveness of adaptation actions that have been supported with international support. The request for information on progress on implementation is covered by the 5 bullet points in paragraph 110, specifically information on implementation of the actions identified in chapter in section D of the guidelines, implementation of the national adaptation plans, strategies, and policies, implementation of adaptation actions that are identified in past adaptation communications, implementation of adaptation actions identified in the adaptation component of the NDC, and implementation of adaptation actions that could be categorized as establishing institutional arrangements, establishing new legislation or regulations, or mainstreaming climate change into existing policies and legal instruments. Bullet points provided by section E should be interpreted as to mean that reporting on the progress on implementation is relevant to all forms of adaptation action. However, countries should note that requests for actions identified in current and past adaptation communications and identified in the adaptation sector section of NDC insinuates that countries should follow up on progress made or not made towards implementing actions that have been planned in previous communications to UNFCCC. This could include when actions are conditional on support. In addition, sorry. In addition, for adaptation programs, strategies, or policy frameworks, bullet point B asks countries to provide information about steps that have been taken to formulate, implement, publish, and update them. With the specific reference to national adaptation plans in bullet point B, maybe a hint that NAP, National Adaptation Plan, might be considered as a primary target of this request. To meet this request, authors could aim to provide a description of the entire process of formulating, executing, and updating the relevant action. For NAP or similar adaptation program, this would involve describing its preliminary phase, from laying the groundwork for addressing gaps towards establishing program, and all the way through the phases which constitute the end of its cycle, evaluation of the results and updating the program. To provide a clear indication of the implementation status of actions, countries will probably need to provide processes and output indicators. In selecting these indicators, countries could choose to use indicators that are specific to the adaptation actions being reported on. The indicators that could describe the milestones reached by that specific action. For example, 6 kilometers of seawall constructed, or adaptation relevant law drafted, and similar. Also, in this context, countries could use more simple and descriptive categories such as just begun, early phase of implementation, advanced phase, delayed, cancelled, etc. And this example you can see in the figure on the right, showing the status of policies and proposals in Scottish Climate Change Adaptation Programme, which contains 148 separate actions. And just to note that this type of presentation of the implementation only really works when reporting on progress in implementing plans and strategies. So you can see here different categories or levels of implementations, like reported complete, on track or ongoing, delayed, dropped, not update, or not reported. So moving to the other request covered by section E, which asks developing countries to provide information about the effectiveness of international support provided for adaptation. Specifically, the paragraph 111 of MPGs asks developing countries to report on the implementation of adaptation actions which are being or have been implemented using international support, and to provide information about how effective these actions have been in addressing the country's climate changes. As such, the aspect of paragraph 111 is asking for information about results and successes of internationally supported actions, and how these results and achievements compare to the action's initial objectives. In addition to providing information about effectiveness in paragraph 111, developing countries could use also information about internationally supported adaptation and its effectiveness as the basis for additional commentary concerning the adequacy of international support that they received for adaptation in relation to specific vulnerabilities and adaptation needs. In other words, you could report on whether you consider to support being provided to be enough, given the size of the climate challenges you are facing. In fact, doing this would be sort of allowed by section F, paragraph 113, which state that parties should provide information about how support programs meet specific vulnerabilities and adaptation needs. In this case, the term vulnerabilities and adaptation needs would refer to specific challenges and needs identified by countries within their adaptation communications and NDCs. Moving to the section F. The main purpose of the guidelines in section F is to ensure countries to provide information about the results of adaptation, specifically the results of adaptation that are calculated by monitoring and evaluation processes. In addition to this, guidelines are also asking countries to include information about how these results were determined and to be transparent about where this information comes from. So the first section is results of adaptation. The guidelines relating to results of adaptation are found dispersed across the paragraphs 113 and 114 of this section. And as can be seen on the right, guidelines make a number of requests for information from broad and generic to quite specific requests. And we can divide them in four broad groups. The first group consists of those that request information about results of adaptation actions. The second are those request information about evaluation of success of adaptation actions and processes. The third requests specific information relating to evaluation of adaptation that are important in the context of the COP, UNFCCC, and Paris Agreement, specifically the adequacy of adaptation support. And the final group, those that request information about good practices and the lessons learned about adaptation through monitoring and evaluation processes. So in the first group are information about adaptation results. The term results, as used here, refers to observed outcomes and impacts related to specific adaptation actions. Any information about results of adaptation presented in the adaptation part of the BTR in response to this request should be determined by some form of monitoring and evaluation M&E processes. Information reported on adaptation results would ideally include quantitative indicators to complement qualitative data and descriptions. However, as we know, in many cases, the metrics through which such qualifications can be conducted will be unclear, will be context specific, or will only provide proxy measures for ultimate intended impact. For instance, increased resilience, reduced vulnerability, and enhanced adaptive capacity. In that case, purely qualitative descriptions of outcomes and impacts may be sufficient as information. Regardless of approach taken to present results, qualitative or quantitative, authors should make efforts to ensure that any results presented are followed with baseline data in order to ensure that the audience is able to measure significance of results that you actually present. Based on this, the guidelines also ask countries to provide further evaluations of adaptation results to determine how successful adaptation actions have been. More specifically, ask for assessments of effectiveness and sustainability. These terms can be defined as like effectiveness is extent to which an adaptation action or process has achieved its predefined objectives or targets, or adequacy is the extent to which adaptation is sufficient to meet specific vulnerabilities and adaptation means. Sustainability means the ability of an action or intervention to continue to achieve its desired outcomes and impacts over the time. The concept of adequacy and effectiveness are crucial for understanding if progress in the adaptation is being made, and they can be addressed by using mixture of input, process, output, and outcome indicators being monitored, and additional evaluation processes like stakeholder consultation or some kind of the expert reviews. All these assessments require significant time and resources to implement. For most of the countries, it seems likely that majority information relating to effectiveness, adequacy, sustainability of adaptation will be limited to flagship adaptation actions for which monitoring and evaluation systems are increasingly actually being developed. That is, if they are evaluated at all, and where this information is available, it will likely be generated through mid-implementation and post-implementation reviews designed to inform changes to the adaptation policy strategy plan that is in question. Section F also asks countries to provide information relating to specific questions that correspond to decision. The first question of this nature is under the paragraph 113, how support programs meet specific vulnerabilities and adaptation needs. That relates to the adequacy of support provided, which have already covered in relation to similar guidelines in the section E. The second and final request of section F also asks for information relating to specific questions that are embedded in the Paris Agreement. For instance, how adaptation actions influence other development goals. And this request actually is clearly asking for information about if adaptation is contributing to the realization of development goals. The next request just a second. In the second, meanwhile, on how adaptation actions influence other development goals, relates to the fact that adaptation needs to be addressed in the broader context of sustainable development planning. This request asking for information about if adaptation is contributing to the realization of developing goals, and evaluating this would likely involve using development indicators, if possible, for future evaluations to evaluate what effect adaptation is having on your country's key development goals. So, next request covered by section E asks countries to provide information on how these results were determined. Actually, that does this asking actually countries to provide information about approaches and systems used and their outputs, assessment of and indicators for how adaptation increased resilience and reduced impacts when adaptation is not sufficient to reduce impacts or it's inadequate, and how effective implemented adaptation measures are, and information to report on any domestic M&E system that countries are using or currently developing to monitor and evaluate adaptation actions. Basically, this as a request to include comprehensive information about countries' domestic M&E systems and to be transparent about where information come from and how indicators for abstract concepts such as vulnerability and effectiveness were measured or evaluated. As informative description of a monitoring and evaluation system, for example, could summarize the aims of the M&E system, its approach and its legal basis, how it works in practice, and its outputs and any limitations associated with that outputs. Importantly, for countries that are in the process of establishing a national system for monitoring and evaluation of adaptation, but have not reached satisfactory level, could provide a description of what have been done so far to develop this system and what is still to be done. Meanwhile, to adequately provide the information necessary to achieve this, countries could provide a description of indicators used to monitor the results of adaptation and assessment methodologies used to determine what these mean for effectiveness, adequacy, resilience, vulnerability, etc. Or how indicators and assessment methodologies were designed, and any assumption upon which the indicators and assessment methodologies are based, and the limitations associated with these assumptions. In both these cases, providing this information in the adaptation BTR itself could end up becoming long and cumbersome. And for that reason, countries should consider utilizing cross-referencing, ideally through hyperlinks, in order to provide the report's audience with access to this information. And just to stress that this can be feasible in practice only if the linked documents are online and publicly available and available in the same language as the BTR. So to conclude this presentation, I would like to provide some final reflections on reporting the implementation and results of adaptation. The extent to which countries can include information about progress of implementation and adaptation results in their BTRs will ultimately and only depend on the presence and the capacities of monitoring and evaluation systems to track action implementation and generate information about results. As such, there should be a general conclusion that countries can only report against the guidelines presented here to the extent which their capabilities allow. In reality, this likely means that in short term, periodic reporting on results via BTRs is likely to be light on ground, as many countries are yet to fully operationalize or even start developing M&E systems for adaptation. Also, periodic reporting on the more methodologically complex aspects of the guidelines, MPGs, might be even further away than, for example, simply reporting on changes in outcomes and impact indicators observed. So to conclude, in any case, this could improve hopefully as countries get better at implementation and designing their monitoring and evaluation systems for adaptation. So thank you very much for your attention. I will stop here and give floor to my colleague Sheila.
Yes, thank you so much for the elaborate presentation. It was really very clear for the different elements we need to consider under section D, E, and F. I will request colleagues now to switch on their camera. We take a photo. I had to wait for this moment when most of us have joined. We have been missing some out of our photos because we take the photo at the beginning, but I thought it's very important we take it at this time when most of us have joined. Kindly switch on your cameras so that you can together take a photo. And I know most of you have been joining, you have been registering, we really appreciate, but if you have not registered, kindly follow the link and you register because we would like to have your contacts for future series. Thank you so much. So I will take the first photo from my side. I can see all the beautiful smiley faces. Yeah, thank you. So I will also take the second one because we are many. Okay. So let me take the second screen. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. We are uploading all these photos on our climate transparency platform. As if you go and visit, you'll find some of this information already uploaded. So now we are going to continue with our session. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat, or you can put up your hand and you ask a question. But at the moment, we have only one question, which is about, yes, I can see someone's hand up. Yes. Sithori, kindly unmute yourself and speak. Then maybe I will read the other question later. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you for a very insightful presentation by Slojana. I am Mikateko Sitole from South Africa. I just wanted to check if we do have some very active or effective M&E systems that can be used as a benchmark, that at the current state they can provide all or be able to support the BTR processes as far as adaptation is concerned. Thanks.
I hopefully that I understood well. So you have already a functional M&E system for adaptation tracking, and you probably could share your experience in tracking adaptation through your M&E system indicators, etc. Am I right?
What I need to know is if you have some references of effective systems by other countries that are already in operation and they are being used as as information sources for feeding into the BTR.
Yeah, thank you very much. In this moment, I don't have information about some operational M&E system, but I know for some countries that started also preparation and development design of their M&E systems, which is like environmental information system consisting two parts, adaptation and mitigation. And I just can say that they have identified indicators, developed the software, and they are testing now the system. So it is under testing phase. So for that example, I can provide you more details, but also I will check with the colleagues whether they know for some country that have established already that have a functional M&E system. Just to let you know that monitoring and evaluation system, yeah, it is very difficult to develop one which can capture all adaptation actions, policies and everything to measure your adaptation actually. And also that's not an issue for developing country, but also for developed countries, which are also struggling with establishing effective M&E system. So also just to note that at our fifth session, which is fully dedicated to experience sharing and good practices, we will have opportunity to hear experience from Finland, from their representative of their environmental agency. And maybe it would be good to ask them to which extent their M&E system is operational. So we will have then information from first hand.
All right, thank you. We also do have, but it's work in progress, and we are looking for better ways to enhance it. We are also, as part of the enhancement process, trying to build subsystems for our provinces, so that when you begin to aggregate the data, it's as per the different provinces that we have. So as I said, it's work in progress. We thought maybe there are some that are already advanced and they are able to quickly pull out information or data that they can use for reporting, because with us at the current state, we are not yet at that level. But yeah, I think we're looking forward to the other session where we can learn from others as far as that is concerned. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think it's also part of sharing experiences. But as you may be aware that there's really generally a big challenge of agreeing on specific adaptation indicators, and then of course that makes the M&E system a bit delayed for some countries, because if the indicators are not so clear and they cannot be tracked, I think that is the other big challenge with adaptation innovations and technologies. The indicators to be tracked over time, sometimes it can be a challenge. And then the adoption and, you know, the sustainability of what it is a big challenge. So I think that's why some of those M&E systems are not very robust as we speak. But we have some countries that have tried to do something. So we hope in the last session, we shall have even some of you share your insights on how you think it can be approached for purposes of learning and learning from each other. In the chat, I had a question that was asking about the community adaptation plans, the basics of developing a community adaptation plans. To just let you know that of course, developing community adaptation plans involves vulnerability assessment studies, and then also involves mapping. But of course, it takes a lot of community consultations, agreeing with on certain elements within that community that they can consider as adaptation activities, but also having a long list that is agreed upon within that community, and then also having a structure depending on what community you are working in, so that you are able to to discuss and prioritize what you would call adaptation activities in that community. And also what is important within the community adaptation plan is coming up with a clear monitoring system of what has been identified as adaptation activities within that community. But mapping and vulnerability assessment they are the key components. But of course, I will allow participants and other colleagues to add, because I know it's not a one-fit kind of approach for the community, developing a community adaptation plan because of the nature of the different ecosystems. So I will ask my colleague to also add on that. And then we can also have someone from any country to add on. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheila. I can say that you covered most of the issues related to development of the community adaptation plans, and just want to add that in development of such a plans, adaptation plans, you can use guidelines for development national adaptation plans as a, just a starting point, and to apply this methodology just on the smaller scale. So that's one good tool also for developing of the community adaptation plans. You're muted, Sheila.
Oh, apologies, I thought I was not muted. I was saying if we do not have a hand or any other contribution, we can go to our next session. So our next session is, I'll be sharing a Mentimeter about a few questions that we can discuss in a plenary session as we answer this. So I'm going to share my screen shortly. Yes, so I will present, and then I will first show you the instructions. So you can go to www.menti.com. The code is 7945100163. I'm going to put this code in the chat for easy reference and access so that we can all log in. I'll give it a few minutes for us to log in before we can start. Yes, kindly log into menti.com. The code is 7945. Yeah, thank you so much. I can see many of us have already logged in. 79450163. Yeah, thank you. So our first question for discussion is what would your country prioritize reporting on a certain type of adaptation, for example, nature-based solutions, adaptation with mitigation for benefits? Yeah, would want, yeah, if you have any ideas of why you think they can prioritize and you have more, you can still put up your hand and we also discuss that, because this is just a discussion session, but we wanted more people involved so that you can really know that we are all together. So we are happy to know that countries actually can prioritize reporting on certain types of adaptations, like nature-based solutions, adaptation with mitigation for benefits. This is very good to know. So if we have anyone who can elaborate for us, then it would also be very important to get that sharing. I might not really see your hand. If you are there and you need to speak, you can unmute and speak. Thank you. The second question is, if yes, which types of adaptation would be prioritized? If yes, which type of adaptation would be prioritized? Maybe I can go back to this question. I hope you can see my screen. Yes, so someone is saying flood risk reduction. Another one is saying mitigation benefits. Thank you. Water management development plans. Good. Yeah. So would really want to understand which of these nature-based solutions or even mitigation or adaptation for benefits can be prioritized. Critical infrastructure, national adaptation plans involving government and local authorities and disaster reduction, landscape restoration, climate smart agriculture, climate resilience infrastructure, nature-based solutions, land use planning, livestock keeping management, then increase in forestry and agroforestry area, renewable energy and program with adaptation for benefits, mainstreaming adaptation in sectoral strategies and plans. I think these are all interesting elements if well articulated to find their indicators so we can actually track our priorities. I think it's a big challenge, but I think if well articulated, it can be achieved. Then our next question is, have adaptation considerations been mainstreamed into any of your country's national development strategies? Have adaptation considerations been mainstreamed into any of your country's national development priorities? Yeah, thank you for letting us know. I can see so many yeses. Thank you. Then our next question is, if yes, please state in which national strategy have the adaptation consideration been considered? In which national strategies have adaptation considerations been considered? Oh, thank you. One country is saying water management strategy, national development plan, and various sector-specific strategies. In agriculture, development strategy. In South Africa, we have national climate change adaptation strategy with key adaptation strategic outcomes. Wow, then these people, this one is saying that 2022 Green Growth and Climate Resilience Strategy considered some elements, priorities for adaptation, and then Sustainable Agriculture Strategy has also considered those. And then agriculture, then the National Adaptation Plan developed in conjunction with the submission of NDC. Wow, it considered those elements. And then the national midterm plans, national climate change plans, and environment master plans. Wow, I think this is good feedback to know that most of the natural resource strategies are putting in consideration the climate adaptation strategies as priority and on mainstreaming them. Our third question is, which adaptation actions are most often implemented by your country? State two most common. Which adaptation actions are most often implemented by your country? State two that are most common. We are waiting. The most common strategies in your country. Oh, wow. Yes, so we have these actions, rehabilitation of degraded lands, anti-flooding measures, climate smart agriculture. Wow. In the EBA, coastal adaptation strategies, irrigation systems, and then coastal erosion, natural risk, like flooding, then flood protection measures. Wow. So at least we are seeing that actions in relation to agriculture, land rehabilitation, and then the floods are the most common, based on what the respondents are providing, the participants are providing. So as you can see, trying to do climate smart agriculture and then flood control actions. Yeah. Oh, then someone is also talking about drought management. Yeah, that is also good to know. Wow. Okay, thank you for the feedback. Keep them coming. Yeah. Thank you so much for the answers. I think this was also too much learning for us. We shall continue learning from each other, and it was very interesting to see the common adaptation actions by different participants coming out so clearly meant for agriculture, and then land degradation and flooding, which is very interesting. Then we need to really understand them well, have feasibility studies that can, or vulnerability studies that can bring out clear elements to define indicators that can be tracked to help us even now define or achieve our targets in the NDC. So I think that is very important. So we are going to go to our second last session for today, which is about country sharing experience. Or if we don't have any question, but if we have a question, we can pause a bit. But we have our colleague from Eswatini who will be sharing with us their experience on how they have been reporting on adaptation, especially under the previous arrangements, including the MRV arrangements, focusing on adaptation, strategic plans, and also monitoring and evaluation. So if we don't have any questions, I don't see any questions in the chat, then we can actually go ahead. So I'll give our colleague Dalmini, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. Allow me to say all protocol observed. My name is Linda Dlamini from Eswatini. I work under the Ministry of Tourism and Environmental Affairs, Department of Meteorology. So I'll be sharing the country experience for Eswatini. As Sheila has indicated, can I just share my screen a bit? Just
kindly share your screen, and you could also first show your face a bit, then you can share your screen.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. So basically, In our adaptation reporting, the exercise is mostly stakeholder-driven process through stakeholder consultations and assessments, where we collect the data and information from stakeholders to update based on what we are reporting at that period in time. Our reporting is mostly on project basis, whereby we have a project, for instance, maybe it's a national communication, would have a project on that one, where would also have some structures through the project with team leaders for working groups, including the one on adaptation, where we would have a team leader for adaptation who would assist the working group in collecting information from different sectors for adaptation reporting. And this would be supported by consultants leading the process of compiling the information. For instance, in the national communication, the adaptation is reported in the vulnerabilities and adaptation chapter, which highlights the vulnerabilities in each sector, including the assessment, how the vulnerabilities were assessed, mapped, and the adaptation options that are then prioritized based on the risk assessments. And it also highlights the summary of progress of adaptation options in that chapter, including new developments, if there are some new interventions since the last reporting of the national communication, and also ongoing adaptation measures that are being implemented. In the NDC, we report the adaptation contribution, which highlights the priorities, priority sectors, and the strategies under those sectors based on the national risk assessments and stakeholder consultations. As well as the adaptation communication. We have the chapter on national adaptation priorities, where we report on the strategies, adaptation strategies. For instance, in the initial adaptation communication for the country, which was submitted in 2021, we had adaptation strategies for prioritized sectors, and we also reported on their alignment with SDGs and the Sendai framework for DRR, so that we could have a coordinated implementation of all the targets to maximize efficiency on resources. In the NAP, which is ongoing currently in the country, the NAP process, which ultimately we would have the National Adaptation Plan envisaged to be completed in December this year. So it will have a comprehensive adaptation strategies, which would be prioritized based on the risk assessments that are currently being conducted. In terms of the monitoring and evaluation of adaptation actions in the country, currently there are some challenges when we are reporting on that, because we have inadequate data collection and data management systems. And also those that are available, you find that they are fragmented, they are here and there, they are not in a coordinated manner that would make ease of reporting. However, there are efforts currently ongoing to have an MRV system for the country that is more centralized and would make ease of reporting. For instance, we have some projects which are on the ground currently, including the Capacity Building Initiative for Enhanced Transparency project, which would establish an online MRV platform. It is also supported by another project, ICAD project, which will also develop.
We can see from our side the slides are not moving.
Oh, they're not moving. Is it moving now? I'm on the slide on monitoring and evaluation of adaptation actions.
No, it is not moving. We are actually not in the presentation mode from my side.
Oh,
Maybe you can reshare.
okay.
Now they can move. I have seen some movement.
Okay. Are we okay now? Monitoring and evaluation of adaptation action slide.
We only see you. We can't see the
We-
slides.
We are not sharing. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, your slide, please.
Can you see it now?
Yes, we can see the slide monitoring and evaluation of adaptation actions.
Okay. Did you see the other one on adaptation reporting?
We did not see.
Oh, okay. But it's just where I started when I was talking about the information collection for adaptation, the reporting, and also the various reporting chapters that we report on from the National Communication NDC, adaptation communication, and also the ongoing NAP process. Can you see that one?
Yes, we can see now it is fine. Kindly go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So now I was on the monitoring and evaluation of adaptation actions, and I highlighted that we have some challenges in terms of monitoring and evaluation because of inadequate monitoring systems currently. And then we have the efforts to establish a monitoring and evaluation platform through the CBIT project and also an ICAD project, which will also complement that, but it's mostly focusing on the health and water sectors, which were mostly not prioritized previously. So we also have the ongoing national adaptation project, which also will develop and implement a monitoring and reviewing system. And also we have the NDC tracking, which currently has is developing the progress indicators for tracking the NDC measures to see if they are implemented as planned, to identify gaps that needs to be addressed to deliver the expected results. So the monitoring and evaluation of all the systems will provide a picture on how the actions contribute to achieving the overall adaptation goals that we will be reporting on. So basically, that is it from my side in terms of the reporting on adaptation in Eswatini. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think it was really very good on sports. You have highlighted a number of elements that we are reporting on, I think, which is very important for us, the institutional arrangements, and also how you have been able to involve the different sectors and subnational levels in adaptation reporting, especially from as we transit to the enhanced transparency, which is very important. So we look forward to see when you start your BTR process, how you will integrate these elements in the report. That will be very interesting. I would like to give a platform to participants here if they can also share with us their insights on how they tend to do the transition based on how they have been organized. I think that would be very nice as we go to our last session. If we have like 1 or 2 people who can share with us, I think it would really bring any perspective. But also, if you have any question to our colleague from Eswatini, it would be nice to ask her. Yeah, thank you. I'm not seeing any hand. Yes, it's fine. You can speak.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you, Dlamini. Sorry if I pronounce not correctly your name. It was very interesting to hear about your adaptation reporting in Eswatini. You mentioned that it is project-based approach reporting, that adaptation is incorporated or integrated in your NDC, that NAP is ongoing, that you are developing M&E system, and there are some issues in that regard. But I would like to ask you about your adaptation goals within the NDC. You mentioned that you incorporated adaptation priorities from your strategies and plans. My question is, how many of these priorities have you included in your NDC? Adaptation priorities. Can you hear? Did you hear my question? It seems that our colleague from Eswatini maybe left or have some technical problems, but the same question can apply to the other countries if they may say something about that. I'm just wondering because there are different approaches to the issue of making or incorporating adaptation goals within the NDC. And the question is the ability of the countries to fulfill their adaptation goals that they stated in their NDCs in the period of 5 years, whether that is possible, is it realistic or not. So you, within your NAPs, National Adaptation Plans, you make a list, a full list of planned adaptation actions. So National Adaptation Plan is midterm planning document. So it's on 10 or more, maybe sometimes more years planning document, but NDC is just on the 5 years. So also, how do you prioritize actions defined in your NAP document to put them, to incorporate as a priority in your NDC adaptation part?
Yeah, okay. It can be also a reflection question because we can really appreciate that from the experience of developing our NDCs, maybe there was no clear understanding of the tracking that is required, and you find that for some of the countries we have interacted with, there were over 100 indicators for adaptation. So it was not clear. I know that's how maybe some participants are not really coming out to speak, but also it can be part of the reflection question so that as we now go into, I know in 2025, we shall be updating our NDC. So those are some of the key questions we can ask ourselves. How do we transit from how we have been doing our adaptation strategies now to setting targets and priorities within our NDC. So I think it's a very good reflection question, which requires that we have maybe discussion. So we shall actually put such questions on our forum, on our discussion forum, on our platform, and we hope that you'll just be giving us pointers on how you feel it should be done, because it's not one fit for all. So it would be very important to understand maybe how a country is planning to do that. Yes, so I can see Pearl from Rwanda. Kindly unmute yourself and speak. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Sheila. Jana, I hope I'm saying your name right. And colleagues from other countries. I just want to share a bit of our experience with adaptation planning, because like everyone else, it's a learning process. But to your questions, Jana, when we were updating our NDC in 2020, we had what we call the Green Growth and Climate Resilience Strategy, which was developed in 2011. So we also had, of course, ongoing adaptation interventions that we thought would be priority. So our main reference was that Green Growth and Climate Resilience Strategy, which had up to 14 programs of action. So those were our key areas where we were looking, and then up to 24 adaptation actions or interventions were selected for the NDC, which we thought to be achievable within the 5 years, and then the next 5 years up to 2030. Yes. So right now, like Sheila mentioned, we learned that the fewer the better, and we have an updated Green Growth and Climate Resilience Strategy, which was developed in 2022. And that is also, again, our main reference, considering lessons learned. And it has fewer programs of action, and we call them programmatic areas. So there are 3 themes kind of, and under each theme are 2 programs of action. So it helps us to really get strategic in our NDC revision process when it comes to adaptation. So I think just in summary, when you have more thematic programs or areas of adaptation within your national plans or national strategies, whether it is the NAP or what we have as a climate resilience strategy, it helps to focus on fewer adaptation actions within your NDC when you're revising. Yeah, so we're also hoping to have, considering the progress, the NDC progress, we are now in the tracking period and preparing our BTR, as well as revising the NDC. So all that is going on at the same time. I think it would help us to continue this sharing so that we can plan better in the next NDC.
Thank you so much, Pearl, for sharing. It is really very interesting on how you have really approached it. And I know for most of the countries, that's the kind of approach they would want to take. And I think we shall have more of those discussions, like you have mentioned, because after some of these webinars, I get messages on how did this country do it from the sharing. So I'll also be encouraging countries to do mutual sharing, because sometimes a country really needs their team to sit with another country to take them through the key guiding steps. So if I approach on you, it would be very interesting. And for those who were not with us on the first day, today, these webinars, series of webinars for these sessions, we are 2 networks from Eurasia that my colleague Silajana coordinates, and Anglophone Africa. And if you feel that you should learn from the submission of any submitted country, kindly reach out to us. We shall really organize that mutual learning experiences so that you can able to learn and implement in your countries. I think we have realized that doing by experience and learning from the one who has experienced it is much better. Thank you so much. Paula, I still see your hand up. I don't know if you want to continue. Yeah.
No,
Then,
I've lowered it. Yes, thank you.
okay, thank you.
Okay,
Yeah,
I would like.
Yes, it's
Sorry,
fine.
excuse me.
Continue.
Okay, I would like to add some words about Moldova to the questions related to Slajan regarding to prioritization criteria for adaptation. In Moldova, we define it as, first of all, alignment with the country climate change adaptation strategy and plans, another relevant country legislation. The second, this is contribution to vulnerability reduction at the national level and increase in climate resilient sustainable development. Third, this is total number of direct and indirect beneficiaries, for example, women, men's, and contribution to the adaptation, contribution to improvement economic performance, social gender benefits also, financing needs of the most vulnerable groups, target population, sector development regions of the country. And also, of course, financial and economic feasibility based on the sectoral investments options have been prioritized. Because in Moldova, we as a rule prioritize it based on the sectoral approach. And here we can see, for example, for agriculture, this is as a rule include such actions as sustainable soil management, promoting efficient irrigation system, promoting the diversity and resilience of agricultural crop, increase food security, promoting integrated food, water, energy system, and etc. Of course, here close to agriculture, we have a lot of measure for water resources because the water resources is very vulnerable in the Republic of Moldova.
Yeah, that is very interesting. Lilia, thank you so much for sharing. I hope I have mentioned your name very well. And that experience is very interesting since you integrated in elements of finance, which I think then brings in sustainability of our adaptation priorities. I think it's very interesting to learn on how the financial was revolving to make the sustainability within the approach that you used. Thank you so much for sharing. I see a hand from Medea. Kindly unmute yourself and speak.
I would say from Georgia's NDC's directions regarding adaptation. For Georgia, adaptation is very important, so it submitted its NDC with the adaptation, not without it. And it comprises mainly assessment of adaptation capacity, adaptive capacity of some ecosystems and sectors, and also developing some areas. For example, first of all, it's assessment of climate change impacts on mountainous ecosystems and with relation to glaciers melting. There is also developing adaptive capacity of our resorts, summer and winter resorts. We have both. Summer resorts mainly are seashore, coastal areas, and assess and develop also adaptive capacity for agricultural production that make the most maximum input into the GDP, and also some unique national products like Georgian honey, and also assess the access to the ground and underground water resources, and vulnerability of forests, forest lands, and also special attention is given to the health, assessing the impact of climate change on human health, and also about reducing loss and damage from extreme weather events, assessing this kind. So these are the most directions the most important directions in adaptation in our NDC.
Yeah, thank you so much. Those are very, very good insights. And I think there's a lot to learn because I can see the approaches are very related but very unique, very customized to the national circumstances, I think, which is the most interesting because adaptation, vulnerability to climate change, the customizing to the national circumstances is very key. And thank you so much for sharing. I think if we don't have any contribution from colleagues, we can go to our last session. So our last session is group work. We shall have group breakup sessions like yesterday for those who are with us. And we shall break in groups. We shall have group 1 and group 2. We shall spend there just 10 minutes to discuss the question that we will be provided with. And then we shall come back to the plenary for 10 minutes, and then we shall have our closing session. So right now, you will find yourselves in groups. So we are going to be assigning you to the different groups. Yes, and then we shall come back 10 minutes. You get a timekeeper so that we don't keep in groups for long. I hope the groups as members have started moving. And please come back. Yesterday, I think most people fell off after the group work. Kindly come back for plenary. Thank you.
It takes time.
Yeah, it takes time, but it's moving, I can see. It's moving.
Shall we move to the room?
I think let's move. I don't know why it is taking so long. So we can just move to the room because I can see now it
Yeah.
is moving. Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's
yeah,
move
yeah.
to the room. Yeah.
Yeah, let's move to the room and start our conversation.
Yeah, it's moving now. I think there was a technical error
Yeah.
or something. Yeah. Thank you. Now you have returned. You had not yet returned.
I know there was a problem with the connection, so it's okay. But tomorrow I'll be here, hopefully. But my friends, I think from Mauritius, they were here, no?
Yes, your friends
Yeah,
from
anyway.
Mauritius were
Yeah, I think
here.
two of my colleagues from other ministries, they were here. Anyway, sorry, I just came from an assignment. So I'll be back tomorrow, okay?
My name is Mohamed Kamara,
Yeah.
Chief of
Okay.
Eastern Transport Tax.
So welcome back. Welcome back to this session.
Okay.
Yes, I can see all of us now are back in the main room. Yes. So I will ask request group 1 maybe to start their presentation. I hope all members were able to come back.
Yes, okay, I'll in short present discussion from the group 1. The question was where can information required to report an adaptation action, progress and results of adaptation can be sourced from? So the most of the countries are stated that the main sources are national communications and NDC, but I'll go now through all at the interesting answers and approaches. For example, in South Africa, they prepare annual report on adaptation with reporting framework and the form shared with the stakeholders. Out of that, they prepare a narrative and they have specific reporting templates, and they prepare that, as I said, on annually basis to feed their NDC and to inform or provide information on adaptation in their BTR. Moldova also sources information from national communication and NDC, but also from climate change adaptation strategy. And also from national development strategy, which incorporates adaptation issues. For BTR, they actually have specific funds to perform adaptation activities, actually to assess vulnerability. So the new studies will be done for vulnerability, and that will be the information that will be shared within their BTR. Georgia, even though they have already prepared their adaptation chapter in BTR, they unfortunately does not have specific national adaptation program. But also they source their adaptation information on adaptation actions from previous national communications and from project outcomes and outputs. So that was the brief report and information on discussion from the group 1. So Sheila, I will stop here. The floor is yours. I suppose that you will report on discussion from the group 2.
Yes. So group 2, we had, I think, one most common insightful I would call it answer for the question. Yes, I have posted the question in the chat, and the question was about what are the common challenges countries face in monitoring, evaluation of adaptation processes, and what are possible solutions to overcome these challenges. could you share what works and doesn't work? So the most common for all the countries was that having adaptation, limited capacity on identifying or synthesizing indicators, methodologies for assessments is a challenge compared to mitigation actions since it involves quantification of proper parameters. So comparing to that, then it makes adaptation a bit challenging to monitor and evaluate. And actually, they said that unless that one is not understood, so it becomes a very big challenge. It remains a challenge. So that was what was really agreed by the group. And I hope we shall post some of these questions on our forum for the conversation to continue. Yes. So that is it from my side. And this is takes us to the last part of our closing session. And would like to wrap up this session by thanking all the participants. We know that it has been a marathon, but there has been a lot of resilience in attendance, in participation, and we do not take that for granted. And we would like to appreciate you and say thank you. And of course, we expect to see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Thank you so much. From me, bye. Yeah.
Thank you to all, and have a nice day.
You too.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Thank you too. Thank you very much. Welcome, Tanzania.
Thanks, bye.